Glad for the all and the Alfred. Sunny, what's going The loudness of music is meant to pave the way. Felly mae'n braf iawn i ddod ôl am cyfarfod to be back here for the third year running. So we've done Welsh mods with Claire Mahoney, we did rock with Jeff Collins last year, and this year we're talking to Neil Collins about the period that we call Cool Cymru. Neil is about to publish a book called International Velvet, and we've just heard the track, Neil.
Yes, so quite a multifaceted title really. I heard an interview with the author of Beatles books called Daniel Rachel, and he was saying that he originally was going to have Britpop in the title of his book, and he bumped into Jarvis Cocker by chance in a shop, and he said, what about this interview I'm going to have with you? Because Jarvis had turned it down quite sort of categorically. So he was like, it's because it's got Britpop in the title. And when we first started the Welsh Music Podcast, which yourself have been a guest on, back in 2019, we talked about a book then. When Calon first came in, they wanted to have Cool Cymru in the title. Now, Cool Cymru can be quite a divisive sort of term. It can make people wince a bit because it's kind of like a marketing collective term from the outside. It's also, the London press and the Western Mail, so it's kind of got a bit of pushback from the musicians themselves. So when he said, I'll change the title, Daniel Rachel, he turned it, he got the interview with Jarvis then, but Jarvis won't even stylize Britpop in his book, he asterisks it, So I thought I wanted to call it after a name of a memorable song. It was originally going to be A Design for Life by the Manics. I went for International Velvet because although it's got a bit of a divisive sort of reaction in terms of it's a bit overblown and it's very tongue-in-cheek, it's not as patriotic as they mean, it's very unlikely that Cerys was waking up every morning and thanking the Lord she was Welsh. But it's really indicative of the huge change in confidence by the end of the 90s in terms of music, culture, sport, politics and language, that a musician could, sing those words and it be, not be laughed out of town. What was your sort of memories the first you heard the song?
I was in club, which is Club Iver Bach in Cardiff, and the manager played it. We're going to have to backtrack in a minute. I obviously worked with Catatonia, and then this was in a period where I hadn't seen them for 2 or 3 years. And this was played on the PA of the club. And when I heard Cerys sing Every Day I Thank the Lord, I'm Welsh. Initial reaction was, oh God, here we go again. And then I realised with Cerys, she is a genius. So it took 2 plays where I thought, that's a great record.
Yeah.
So Neil, let's go back to the beginning. How come you've written the book?
So it happened during lockdown. Myself and a friend, James Cuff, started the Welsh Music Podcast in 2019. And during lockdown, we were emailed by the University of Wales Press. They were setting up a new imprint, non-fiction imprint called Calon, meaning Heart in Welsh, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the press. So they approached me for that, and I thought, oh, brilliant, it was originally going to be an entire history of Welsh music, which is a tall order. So we decided that I think everyone's sort of nostalgic for the time they grew up in, and I'm a huge sort of 90s fan. I was born in 86, and I think there's such a nostalgia now for the 90s, but also that book about Cool Cymru hadn't really been written in any sort of length. Hugh Stevens has recently released Wales 100 records, and a big reason for him releasing that book was he was sad that it never existed. So although there's been moments like David Owens did a book called Cerys, Catatonia and the Rise of Welsh Pop in the Millennium, that was mainly Catatonia. So it's quite apt that it's a 90,000 word history of the 90s, but it's got an intro from the 60s to the end of the 80s, because I think you really need to go back and explore that Welsh language scene that was bubbling away that resulted in the formation of superfoods in Catatonia, but also the outro cut to the 21st century. So it's a bit of a potted history within 90,000 words, and with International Velvet as well. The title also, I like the fact that it denotes Wales exporting great music to the world.
And I guess it had to be written, I mean, the Cool Cymru thing was invented by, I think it might have been the enemy, Neil, I have no idea, it came from somewhere.
Well, yeah, doing the research, it was the London press, certainly, but it was first reported in the Western Mail, apparently, which was where the Cymru, but I don't think the English press would have, had the Cymru bit in it, but yeah, that's where it's first.
So we've been asked over the years, probably a million times about this, and I've always said, well, it's better than being uncool Cymru, which is where we started. So I guess it needs to be written. It's an important time because there's a change. In the 80s, some of the bands that became Super Fur the Animals and Catatonia were in what we'd call Welsh language bands. That's not a genre, but Griff, David and those of the Furries were in Far Coffee Pound. Mark in Catatonia was in a band called Kirf. And I think it was about 92, they'd all run out of road. I joke about the A417, and they'd been up and down that one so many times. They had nowhere left to go. And there's a real change, and it happens really quickly, where all those bands give up, and then they reappear. And then the big change is they're singing in both languages. It's an interesting time, and then what it leads to, which we'll get on to in a minute, whatever we say about Cool Cymru, it did change beyond our wildest dreams, I think.
I think, by the end of the decade, 1999 I always think is the peak. So, in wider culture you've got huge events like the Rugby World Cup, you've got the FA Cup final just on the horizon, you've got the renovation of Cardiff Bay, you've got the first 5-star hotel in Cardiff, and amongst it you've got number one albums from Stereophonics, you've got number one albums from Catatonia, huge gigs at Margam Park and Morpher Stadium, you've got the Manics headline in Glastonbury, you've got That Try by Scott Gibbs, I don't know if anyone remembers that, against England in the last minute. Huge stars like Rhys Mwyn, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Joe Calzaghe, Colin Jackson, and then to top load you've got Manic Millennium as well, so that is a huge shift from the 1990 really, when yourself was trying to sort of get a rebranding of Welsh culture, I suppose.
So what's interesting with the book, I guess, is you're writing about the changes that happened in the 80s, the prelude, if you like. And I'm interested because how you see it, a lot of the Welsh language bands started playing outside Wales, obviously, and then started playing in Europe, obviously, and then did things like Radio 1 sessions, which meant you could go to Newcastle and people would know your songs or know who you were. So I don't know what you thought of all that, because you certainly dealt with characters like Dave Datblygu in the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a whole bunch of people that were influential for what's to come next, I guess. I
liked your description of it on the Welsh Music with the podcast that I do, where you said it was like rounding up the Magnificent Seven, the fellow travellers. So it's people like Dave Datblygu, real sort of maverick character really, wasn't afraid to take the mick out of Plaid Cymru, S4C, who were people who were, let's not forget, the people who were really influential apparently in Welsh language music. But yourself met with Dave, was it at the bandstand, and then you met with Mark Kirv and Ian Tingle. Tell us a bit about that, and then leading to when you eventually found John Peel in London.
Okay. I think it's about 82, 83. There's a real feeling that something has to change within Welsh culture. And I came across a band called Datblygu from Cardigan who were making little cassettes, and in those days everyone was writing letters to each other. And we decided the best course of action was to go down to Cardigan to meet Dave. And we met on the bandstand in Cardigan in the middle of the day, and Dave had a pint of beer with him. And the first thing he did was to knock the pint of beer all over myself. Just good introduction. And he was the first one that we realised, now we change. This is where it changes. And then there was a gig in Conwy soon afterwards, and a band called Kirth from Llanrwst playing, who later become Catatonia. And they were cute, they were good looking, they had haircuts. Llanrwst was always looking towards Liverpool and Manchester. They were a lot more trendy than most of us. I thought, right, they look good. So I went on stage at the end and said, hello, we're making this record, which is the first compilation with all those bands on it. And Barry, bless him, the guitar player, he's not with us anymore. The first thing Barry said was, don't sign anything, lads. You know, you could see me coming. And then the next band we came across was Tunnel Tywyll, and they looked like mods with Paul and Excellent. And I thought they looked good as well. It was nothing to do with music, it was just how good they looked. And slowly we gathered all these people, and honestly, we never ever discussed the manifesto or the plan. We just knew it was about change. If you look, it's something, I don't know whether it's in the book, Neil, but a lot of these early days were filmed by a filmmaker called Pete Telfer, and Telfer used to come along and film everything. And I honestly, I never watched this stuff, I never look at all that. But anyway, on occasion when we do happen to look at it, all you see backstage is all of us giggling throughout. It's one huge blast, but we knew we were changing, and the agenda was everything Welsh has gone. This is the new thing. And they all agreed. And then you had characters like Rhys Mwyn, as I call him, the Hollywood actor. Rhys used to write letters in purple ink, never blue, purple ink. You get these rants on letters. And Rhys's thing was, we saved his life, and whatever it is we were all doing, it gave him that opportunity to have a voice, have a direction. And that just continued. Without a plan, without knowing what we were doing, it just continued, step after step. And I think the beauty, and we'll go back to Neil, there was more passion than sense. The John Peel thing, I tracked him down to a wine bar in London and presented him with those first records with Datblygu and Kirth on the record. And he looked at me and goes, are you a mugger? In his posh voice. And no, we've come down from Wales with this record. And he played it. And that was the big change for us lot. He played those records. And then all of a sudden you go to Bristol and you go, oh, we heard you on John Peel.
Yeah.
And that's what triggered it.
Up until the moment that you met Peel, and obviously you went to London, Rhys knocked on doors, he demanded to see The Enemy, Sounds, Melody Maker. There was a lot of kind of horror stories back then of A&R men not coming over the Severn Bridge to Wales. There was rumours of Welsh bands going over to Bristol to have English postmarks on their records that, you know, send out. I spoke to two producers, Gorwell Owen, who was famously the Super Furries, amongst many other things. He said that a lot of bands have been North Wales playing on the fact they were from Liverpool. Greg Haver, as well, a famous Mannix producer, Catatonia and Furries. He said he practically threw up the bunting if an A&R man came over the bridge to Cardiff. When I tweeted about this, Richard Parfitt, the singer from the 60-Foot Dolls, retweeted it with urban myth on it. So what was your sort of reality? How bad was it?
See, I like Richard from the 60-Foot Dolls because at the height of Cool Cymru, Richard's thing was, we're not from Wales, and we're not from England, we're from Newport, Gwent. So I thought, that's the line. And he's written a book now, hasn't he, Stray Dogs, which is a gory, horror, violent. It's actually quite enjoyable, but it's seriously OTT. But Richard was one of those people who was articulate and great pop songs, 60 Foot Dogs. We always liked Newport, you see. We always felt at home in Newport because it wasn't Cardiff, wasn't North Wales. First time we went to Newport, it's that Welsh band. Second time we went to Newport, you're not too bad. Third time we went to Newport, we like you lot. And honestly, with the Newport lot, they used to come to Cardiff to see us play, and I would drive them home in the back of the van to Newport because there's no trains, and then go back to Cardiff to pick the band up before driving back to Bangor. And Newport's always been good on them. And a lot of this wouldn't have happened without Newport. Mannix, interestingly, when they started, and this is a good example, they were pretty boys, weren't they? In girls' blouses and lipstick and bit modern, bit punky, and out of kilter with everything else. It was at the time of Happy Mondays and all that. Interesting band, early days, but there was nothing Welsh about it, apart from the fact that they'd come from Pontypridd and Blackwood.
Yeah.
Last year, I interviewed James for a radio show, the singer, and we were doing an interview about the Mannix working with Tony Visconti, who produced Bowie, T-Rex, better than that, who's married to Mary Hopkins, but James did one of the best interviews, that it had nothing to do with me, it was him, a craftsman talking about how they wrote their songs and how Visconti brought something to the table. And we text now in Welsh. So I sent James little text messages because his kids go to Welsh school. In '92, when they were doing Motown Junk, you would have never imagined that change. So this is the thing with Cool Cymru. There's been a huge change from all the cliches, isn't it? All the cliches. And I think the Mannix kept their heads down for a while because they never admitted really that they were Welsh. These days, Nick's got his bloody flags on, isn't he? They've gone born again. It's good. I mean, I think if anything good has come from it, that James, the singer, puts his kids in Welsh school and he's learned the language. Good on him.
I mean, that's quite the shift, really, from the early 90s. I tend to think the Mannix didn't really embrace their Welshness until everything was going, the big success, really. This Is My Truth, Tell Me Yours, their most quintessentially Welsh album, inspired by Niall and Bevan quotes. It's got references to True Erin on Ready for Drowning, Welshman volunteering the International Brigade, Not If You Tolerate This. But back in 1992, Richie Edwards referred to the Welsh language as dead culture. He said it's really patronising the way these bands suddenly learn to speak the Welsh language when they've written songs about the bright lights of the Mersey or Liverpool 2 years before. Now he's talking about the alarm there. Now Mike Peters was not a Welsh speaker, learned to speak Welsh and then released albums bilingually, Change and Newid in 1989 and Raw and Tan in 1991. What was the reaction amongst his contemporaries, certainly the Welsh language contemporaries? Were they on board with it, or was there a lot of scepticism about it?
No, the Alarm were huge, weren't they? They played in America with Bob Dylan. We knew Mike Peters quite well, but we still thought Mike was a pop star. Yeah. And then when he started singing in Welsh, we were invited to a studio in Wardour Street in London. I think we were playing the night before, and we're back to Tony Visconti. They would be produced by Tony Visconti, we're back to David Bowie. And all of us were marched into this studio to hear the Alarm's Welsh language tracks. And I can still remember, I was being polite, so I was going like this. Yeah, this is good. Sean, my brother, was like this. I hated every second of it. And then the guitar player was a huge Bowie fan. Good, it's Tony Visconti, it's Tony Visconti. And in those days, that would have been
So that was, 89 was the first one changed in Elf, yeah.
We were still a bit punk rock, so we wouldn't have acknowledged that we were in all of Tony Scott's. Yeah. So I thought the Alarm thing was good, but we did some touring with the Alarm.
Yeah.
When in that phase when they got Born Again Welsh. And because they were such a popular band, when you supported bands like the Alarm, you'd have 5,000 people that absolutely hated you for being on stage. And it was just, get off before the Alarm. Quite entertaining, you know. I've got a great story. Dave Sharp, the guitarist, came into our dressing room and he wanted eyeliner before going on stage. And he managed to, I think it was nice, my wife gave him her makeup back. Never got it back. And even to this day, if I say anything about the Alarm, she goes, that bastard Dave Sharp never gave me eyeliner back. Never forgive him. So, I mean, it was all good. You can't, I think with these things, the Alarm did what they did, didn't they?
Yeah.
They were a bit before the Cool Cymru thing, I guess.
Yeah, because they broke up after time until around the millennium then. But they did have a lot of sort of anti-Welsh flack from the national media, as did the Manics. Pretty much every headline was some sort of naff pun. It could be sexy motherfuckers or gangbangers.
Could dance.
Yeah, so it wouldn't even matter where it was accurate to where they lived, as long as it was some sort of Welsh pun. It was like a kind of like a low blow, a branch to hit Welsh bands with. Did you have much anti-Welshness around that time?
Not really. I think the best headline ever we had was Come Dancing. That was a good one. The first ever enemy interview we did was Welsh Rape Beat. I thought that was really good. To be honest with you, because it's touched in the book, there's a real thing about people discovering whatever Welshness means. So whatever it is for James or Mick and Mannix, whatever they discover, whatever Mike Peters, and then from Frill, aren't they? Which is...
That was the one you make me feel right, Mighty Rill. Yeah.
It's a tough town, Frill. So everybody has different experiences. I think we always laughed, you see, we were never bothered about what they said. So when they went Come Dancing, we went, great, we'll bring it on, we'll dance. We were never bothered with it. The first album we ever did, as a band, had a sheep on the front with a skateboard and a Mohican. So, you know, when we used to play in Liverpool, they'd go, oh, sheep shaggers. And then we just say, it's nice to be back in Birkenhead, and that will shut it up. So, it's a question of whether you can embrace it and laugh. It's the best thing. We just used to smile, just laugh. But there was, you know, a lot of these bands had to come to terms with whatever it meant, didn't they? And that is interesting because the change between, well, I remember phoning Mannix up early days. We used to do Powerhouse in Islington on St David's Day and offered them the gig. And they were up for doing it, but for some reason they couldn't do it. There's just been a huge change, huge change over that Cool Cymru period. And it comes back to it, they all moaned about it in the band, we don't want to be categorised, we don't want to be defined, we don't want to be Cool Cymru. They were all on top of the pops, all having #1 records, all making a lot of money. And I was just saying, well, we've been experts at not selling records. We've been uncool for all these years, stop moaning. Yeah. It is what they wanted. And you know, with someone like Keris, bless her, from day one with Keris, you knew, one, she's highly intelligent, highly intelligent, and I always knew there was more to Keris than just being a pop star, which is what we see now with Six Music and the books and Dylan Thomas and all the rest of it. But it was what they wanted. I mean, the level of, what's the word for it? Ambition. They were always highly ambitious. So when they got Cool Cymru, I sort of thought, well, that is what you wanted. You got it. They bought houses. It wasn't too bad.
So Catatonia gestated from a Cyrff with Mark Roberts and Paul Jones. And the The fairy tale to the story was that, if you remember, Cerys was supposed to be busking outside Debenhams in Cardiff, and Mark says she's broken her string, and Mark comes over and hands her the string, and they set up Catatonia. It's all complete nonsense. It's completely made up just to make